Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for attending this evening. Yay. So this is our first Public Works informational meeting. It is the first of 3. We have 2 more coming up in October, one during daytime hours and another evening one. And so if you find this important, informational, and worthwhile, we encourage you to invite your neighbors and friends to come to our future meetings. And of course, you can always come back if you realize you have a question that you didn't get a chance to ask. This evening, I would like to thank our electeds and our staff for being here. Oh, first of all, I'm Sonia Shubsky. I'm with the Communications Department. This evening, we have joining us Mayor Frank Allman. From District 1, we have Virginia Reese, Councilmember Virginia Reese. And District 2, we have Councilmember Kara Schroeder. And District 3, we have Councilmember Ann Lerner. From staff, we have our City Manager, Tammy Hanlon. We also have our Deputy City Manager, John McHenry, but I think he's outside. And our subject matter expert, Ken Hildebrandt, our City Engineer. So I won't take up any more time, but just as a reminder, we have some flyers and takeaways here. All of this is also available on our website. We have a full comprehensive page. It's tuckerga.gov/publicworks. And there you can find a copy of the presentation that you'll see tonight. You'll actually find a recording of tonight's presentation. We are Zooming live right now. So when we come to question and answer time, we would encourage you to come and stand at this podium and speak directly into the microphone so that our neighbors that are watching at home can hear you as well. If you are not comfortable speaking publicly, which many are not, we do have the option of a comment card, and feel free to keep a pen. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mayor Frank Allman and thank him for his time.
Hi, everyone, and thank you from me and the rest of us also for being here tonight. This is a really important topic, of course. It's a unique time in the history of our city, as it were, in terms of the things that we do and the things that we want to work on. And so we're going to talk through what that's all about. Fairly informal. We've got a slide deck that I'm going to go through that lays out the proposal, as it were. It's really pretty straightforward. It's not too complicated. I know every one of you is thinking, how much is this going to cost me? We're going to get there, and it's going to be a nice, clean, easy to understand answer. But we're also going to talk about what you get for what you pay, which is the value proposition. So we're going to just talk through the process and the definitions, what we mean when we're talking about public works and all the related things. Not going to take too long. And then we're going to have some question and answer. Ann Lerner's here. She's been, in fact, Ann and Kara have been, the 3 of us have been sort of the subgroup of our council that's worked on this issue most recently, especially since some new council members joined us first of the year. So they'll be available to maybe offer some of their insights or answer some of your questions when we get to that point as well. So, you know what, I'm just going to start through these, but I'm going to pause in a couple of places along the way and maybe talk about some things that are not on the slide. So first of all, it's a referendum, which means you vote. And this is part of what we said and promised and established when we created the city of Tucker 6.5 years ago. On the same election day, when you're voting on all the stuff you're seeing the commercials about, we can't afford TV money, so you won't see commercials about this item, but it'll be on the same ballot and it'll be pretty far down. So you're going to have to remember and look for it and get past the first couple of races that are getting all the attention. So you'll vote on a question, which we'll show you here in just a second. But the long and the short is, should the city of Tucker take responsibility for what we call public works? In our case, that means stormwater and roads and maintenance, which we'll define further for you here in a second. But that's the basics of what it's about. So we have from now till then to help you get educated. And let me say, as we get started, when a city, any kind of government proposes something like this, we won't spend city resources advocating for it. We individually have our thoughts on it. We'll share those with you. But as a city, this is a public education process. We're just trying to help you know what it's all about and what the considerations are. So I mentioned there are two categories of services, if you will. Roads and maintenance. So right off the bat, we enter into one of the places where people are a little confused about what the city does. You know that we pave roads. You've seen that. We might have paved your road. We do that mostly from SPLOST money. So you know that you pay an extra penny in sales tax for a special purpose local option sales tax. Tucker gets upwards of 5 million, nearly $6 million a year in a good year from that fund. And we're required to spend it in certain ways. The bulk of that is transportation infrastructure, capital improvements to roads. That's when we come through and pave a whole street or mill it up and put down new pavement, capital improvement. Pothole, broken curb, stop signs pushed over, signal doesn't work. Those are all maintenance items. And today you're paying tax to DeKalb County and they're to provide that service to you. So you may have been one of the many, many people we've talked to who said, I have a pothole on my road, and we've said, we'll call the county for you, because that's the way that it's set up right now. So when we talk about taking over roads and maintenance services, that's what we're talking about, is that we would assume those services. You would no longer pay those taxes to DeKalb County. You would pay those to the city of Tucker, and we, in the person of Ken over there, and a staff that's employed here locally, working out of our city government, would provide those services. We'll get to some more of that in a little bit. The other half of what we call public works is stormwater. There's some clever ways of saying this, but the easiest way to understand it. So we have drinking water, we have sanitary sewer, and we have stormwater. We're only talking about stormwater. So if you don't drink it or flush it, that's what we're talking about here, right? If it hits your roof, if it falls in your driveway or your yard or the parking lot out there and it runs down into a culvert somewhere, that water's got to go somewhere. Those pipes that it goes through, those lakes and ponds where it's detained and all of that, that's the stormwater system. And that's what we're talking about taking responsibility for as the city of Tucker. And so all of those repairing, replacing, installing new infrastructure around that, that's what we're talking about. So in our case, every city uses public works in a little bit different way. That's what we mean when we say public works. So I'm going to pause right here just for a second, and it's going to sound like I'm digressing, but to me, this is the critical issue, not only in why we became a city, but why cities and counties exist, and why and how we're different from the federal government and the state government. The city of Tucker doesn't print money. We don't raise armies. We don't operate a post office. That's what the federal government does. The state has duties and responsibilities. It's local government that deals with these kinds of things. This is what we're here for. Now, counties and cities are a little more similar in that we're service delivery organizations. We build roads and we build parks and we maintain them and we do things like that. So in some places, in some cases, the county government is the most local form of government that you have, and they provide these things. We became a city so that we could do, in our case, very specifically, we wanted to do the things that we felt like we could do better as a more local government than we could in cooperation with the county. So when we became a city, we left a lot of those services with the county: police, fire, EMS, the drinking water system, the sewage system. Those are not things that we're likely to take on anytime soon. Some more likely than others, but those are bigger things that for the time being, we've decided we're better off working with the bigger organization. We decided we could do parks better ourselves locally, right? Because who cares more, knows more about the parks in our neighborhood? And we made the same decision about zoning and code enforcement. So where we are now is we have said, we the council voted unanimously to put this ballot question out there for you to vote on, because we think we can do better now on this topic: roads and maintenance, stormwater. What you see here Those are all items that are included in the services, the group of services that we're talking about. We have, since the beginning of our time as a city, if you've ever called about a pothole, if you've ever called about a broken catch basin, which is that concrete thing, you know, the water goes down under, sometimes a truck runs over it and it's cracked and it looks terrible. If you've ever called us about those things, we've reported it to the county. We have a monthly meeting with our staff and their staff. We keep up with every single one of those items until it's dealt with. This is how long it's taken on each of those kinds of items, on average, over the 6.5 years we've been a city, to get them dealt with. So on average, a pothole takes 91 days. Now I heard somebody say they got lucky and man, they called and 6 days later, the road was smooth and great. Lucky you. We must have had a truck in the area. Everything was good. But you can see an asphalt repair patch, which is just sort of a pothole, only bigger. It's not just filling in and paving over. It's a bigger section of pavement, but less than paving the whole road. 204 days on average. Traffic sign issues. The sign gets pushed over, trees grow in front of it. It fades and you can't see it well at night. 69 days. So the question is, do you believe we can do better? If you pay those taxes to the city of Tucker instead, we want to stand up an organization that we believe can do a lot better. And that's the crux of the issue. That's what we're talking about. That's what you're going to be voting on. So here's how we think we're going to do better in some measurables. And there's a lot of, I'm going to say low-hanging fruit. Here's Robert Patrick, Commissioner. Welcome. This is what we intend to be able to do. There's several different issues at the same time. So I didn't print it out. In my phone, I have a list. This is the list of open projects that we talk about and meet about at least monthly, but really something on it comes up almost every day. It's 50, 60 items long right now. Some of them are 1,000 days old. So first thing we want to do is eliminate that backlog. We know deferred maintenance items that have not been addressed in a long time. We got to clear that out. We're in a very unique and a very advantageous position to be able to do that for some reasons that I'll also explain as we go through. So we got to get rid of the backlog. We got to improve response time relative to those data points that I was just showing you. And then sort of get us through the deferred maintenance and into a regular maintenance kind of condition so that when there's a problem, some item breaks or fails or whatever it is, and it needs attention, we have the time and the resources to pay attention to that right now, rather than putting it in line behind a long backlog of stuff. The other thing that's exciting is technology gives us the ability to do a lot of things now that we haven't always been able to do. We already have a person we call a community connector. Came straight from dinner. When you call City Hall, the main number, other than if she happens to be at lunch or something, you're going to get a live person answer your call. And that person's going to help you get to where, you know, you got a dead animal on the side of the road. Who cleans that up? I got a pothole. Who do I talk to? But technology will allow us and allow you to use your phone for that and report it right now. You can take a picture, send it to us. It's right, feeds directly into the system, and we know what the need is, and we're able to queue it up for service. That's just one small example of the kind of thing that we can do, but 24/7 community, 24/7 customer service reporting, and then tracking. You can see where it is in our system. You can, you know how you follow the little pizza guy when you order from Domino's or someplace? It's going to be us. We're going to have a little truck on there. Am I over promising? Maybe a little. Something like that. We'll get there. All right, Sonny, move us along. So how will the referendum appear on the ballot? We had to put a lot of effort and thought into exactly how this would look, but this is the exact text that you'll see, again, somewhere farther down the ballot. And we tried to make it as straightforward. You know, sometimes you see these questions and you go, what? I'm not voting on that. I don't even know what that means. This should summarize what you're going to hear from me and all of us tonight. It goes a little beyond the bare bones, but it will remind you, I think, pretty readily of what we've talked about tonight and what it is that we're asking for. I think we're going to see some more detail on that in a second. Oh, here's some ways you can vote. In case you didn't know, there's been a lot of talk about how people vote. You can still vote by absentee ballot. You can still early advance vote beginning October 17th, 3 weeks prior to election day. And then you can vote in person on election day. Same thing in all cases. You got to remember to go look for this item. Don't get tired going down the ballot or bewildered by all the things there are to vote on. Work your way down to this question. What happens if the Public Works referendum passes? Go ahead. So this is some of what I mentioned. We'll be prioritizing in year one, especially the deferred maintenance items and key repair items that we're aware of. And I can't see if it says it here or not. It says under year two, it talks about reducing the time of new reports by 50% relative to those numbers that I showed you before. And I'm just going to tell you, if we can't reduce those by 50%, we have our own set of problems. We are 1000% confident that we can do that. So here's a little bit of a timeline, just so you know how it works. We are planning to pass the referendum. We're not assuming it, but we're planning for it right now. We're talking about how to stand up a department and what sort of staffing levels it'll need, what sort of equipment we've got to have on hand, how we'll deal with. So on day one, we've got the backlog that we want to deal with. We will probably also hear from a lot of people who have a problem and they've been waiting for somebody to report it to. We're going to get those. We're going to have new stuff that comes up starting on day one, all of which we're going to have to deal with. And so we're planning how to be in a position to deal with all that. So if the referendum passes in December, the first thing, this gets to what it's going to cost you. So follow me here. When we established the city of Tucker, it had a limit in our charter, no more than 1 mil of property tax. One. For reference, I'll say it wrong. Robert is going to shake his head if I say it wrong. DeKalb's millage, 26, somewhere in that range total, something like that. I put him on the spot. He's not going to. It's a lot, and the school system has 20 something in addition to that. The point is, Tucker has very, very little millage rate, property tax rate right now. And we said, if we ever want to raise that, either because we just need to raise it or because we're taking on additional services and we need to raise the millage rate to fund that, that'll be done by referendum. So the city council does not have the power to raise that millage rate. That's the first part of the referendum question. So if you say, yeah, we want to take on these services, you have to also say, yeah, we want to enable the city to raise enough taxes to pay for them. So there's two components to this, as we've talked about. So the roads and maintenance services, you're paying tax to DeKalb County right now. If it passes, you would no longer pay that tax. You would pay that instead to the city of Tucker. And we believe we need a little more than what you're paying to DeKalb County right now to provide the level of service that we want and we believe you want. On an average house in the city of Tucker, $328,000 in value. That additional millage that we're talking about raising amounts to $70 a year on that house, on that $328,000 house. So you can do some mental math for yourself to think about how it might affect you. It's not a lot. That's the point. Stormwater is funded a little bit differently. It's a fee instead of a tax. It's still money out of your pocket. In the law, it's treated a little bit differently. Today, every single family residence in DeKalb County pays $4 a month for stormwater service. $4, $48 a year. I think some of us agree, even if DeKalb is doing a great job on stormwater, that's not enough money to get it done. There's not enough money raised from that to provide the level of service that we believe we all want. We're talking about raising that from $4 to $6 or $24 a year difference. Instead of 48, you'd be paying 72. That's what this slide talks about. And I think we're going to put that all together here. On an average house and a typical $6 a month stormwater fee, you're just under $100 a year. more than what you pay right now to DeKalb County for the same services. You with me? I'm trying to be as simple as I can be because I don't want anybody to feel like we're tricking anybody or hiding something or anything else. $2 a month more for stormwater, $70 a month on the average valued house in Tucker. A year, I'm sorry, excuse me. A year, that's a difference. This is just a comparison so that you'll know cities around us who are doing their own stormwater. To give you a sense, there's DeKalb County right now at $48 a year. And you can see Chamblee, Brookhaven, Dunwoody, they're all in the range of $5 to maybe a little more than $7 a month. Decatur does theirs a little bit differently. But basically, we end up right in the middle of the group. Part of the reason we're confident that we can provide the service, we've compared ourselves in terms of miles of pipe and quantities of all those things to similar cities, and we're confident that we can provide a high level of service for $72 a year. If approved by voters, the following services would transition July 1st of next year. So if we pass the referendum in November, we've done some planning, we'll do a lot more planning, start engaging staff, doing some studies in order to be prepared to actually be in this business on July the 1st. And again, there's another little summary of the kinds of services that we'll be providing. Why is the city advancing this referendum at this time? We talked right off the bat about local control and the ability to do some of these things for ourselves. We've assessed the current performance levels of what DeKalb is providing, and we're convinced that we can do better. I mean, it really is that simple. There's not any requirement for us to be in charge of these services, but as we've said, we're outlining important service delivery improvements in the way that it works. What happens if the public works referendum doesn't pass? What happens, Sonia? Nothing changes. You keep paying the same taxes and fees that you're paying right now. CAD continues to deliver the services. We rely on them. The city serves as kind of an intermediary and hopes to manage and add value to that process, but nothing changes. It just requires a simple majority vote. If it passes, we've talked about what happens. If it doesn't pass, nothing changes. Key dates to remember. There you go. We saw some of that earlier. What else? Thank you. I mean, really, it's not a complicated thing. It's complicated to provide the service and do all the things that go into it, but we're very highly confident about the funding levels needed and that we can manage this process. Part of, I sort of glossed over why now. Let me address some of that. We started talking about this several years ago and we kind of got waylaid by COVID, as so many things did. We continued during all that time to work with DeKalb County, trying to innovate, trying to figure out better ways for us to work together, to get different response times. This is not about us being angry with DeKalb or calling them out for being a poor service provider. It's the nature of the business. More steps in the process, more people involved, the communication, the priorities. This is why local government, this is what we do. And we think that this has become, because we've matured as a city, we've been at this for coming up on 7 years now, we're in a position to be able to do it. Another really important factor, the federal government had two big funding bills related to COVID. You remember the CARES Act was the first one kind of right in the midst of COVID that they were trying to help communities, they were trying to help individuals, they were trying to help cities and counties and states weather that storm. And then they followed with another called the American Rescue Plan, $2 trillion, I think. That plan gives us a little bit more flexibility in how we spend the money, but the idea of it was to spend it on things that would help us prosper, endure, survive another future unknown of the same scale. So we found out green spaces were really important during COVID so that people would go outside. we found out stormwater mattered a lot while everybody was in their homes. And if the stormwater were not working properly, we would have some really big problems. Broadband became extremely important. People working from home, kids doing school from home. And so this ARPA money, which is about $13.5 million in the case of Tucker, more than our annual operations budget, $13.5 million. One of the points of it was stormwater. So what it's doing for us right at this particular moment is giving us some cash reserve for two important purposes. One is to address the deferred maintenance and the backlog that exists. The other is to give us some cushion if on July the 2nd, we have some cataclysmic event and a part of the stormwater system collapses or fails or whatever might happen, we would have the funds to be able to deal with that out of current cash while we're trying to get back to a maintenance level and spend the monthly fees that you'd be paying. So we identified that one of the bright spots of coming out of COVID was that we have this funding available and we can designate it, sort of set it aside to help with those two things and help us set up particularly the stormwater part of the service. Ann Lerner's here and Kara Schroeder. Y'all come up and let them see who you are. I mentioned that the two of them, we've done the meetings together. We've ground through the details and things. If there's anything you'd like to add, please do, or maybe there are questions.
It's great to see so many faces, new and familiar faces, as well as Mayor Allman said. And I know there's some people who just came in, and so we'll get to Q&A in a few minutes, and you might have missed some of the really big highlights and hotspots. So one thing to say is, I feel, having been part of the cityhood movement, but also living here for 25 years and volunteering just as a citizen throughout our community, it's an important time in our city to make this decision, and it's purposeful, because when we wrote that charter, not every city does this. They might just say, we're going to take over a service and we're going to raise taxes, and they just do it, right? We have said, and we are keeping that promise because we were in some of your living rooms talking about it, and some of you were in those meetings. It's going to be on a ballot, and you are the decision maker. So that promise was kept from the beginning of cityhood. And so, you know, I think that is something really big, because not all cities do this, right? Some people thought we were freaking crazy, right? And maybe we were, but we're keeping that promise, and our citizens get to make that decision because, you know, we all receive those services, right? I'm going to try to stay on education, I promise. Two, you talked about, we felt when we voted to put it on a referendum, we had done everything possible. When I tell you that Michelle Pancava worked day in and day out to try to get things righted, the ship righted, and to make that relationship work better for service for you, and she couldn't do it, I knew we were ready. She was your former council person who rolled off council. She's tenacious, right? She has at it. We could not get it to a point where we felt comfortable saying we would have better service for you provided. Three, I see that, you know, we have shown when we first started to pave roads, right? Here's an example. We had SPLOST dollars for new. SPLOST is always new, right? Government always gives you money for new, nothing for maintenance. So we had that money. We hired an engineering firm that went around and drove all of our roads. Was it 22 square miles? Ken, is that correct? 22 square miles of road, did an inventory of signs and everything else, and rated those roads, right? Worst, first to worst. And we just methodically went through that list. It wasn't Frank got his road paved, or I got my road paved, or somebody else got their road paved. Yeah. So, you know, it was systematic. And it was a procedure that a third-party expert came in and did for us. It was the same thing with parks. Do you remember when we accepted the parks? All playgrounds got replaced, right? Grass started being cut. What were the safety issues? What were the deferred maintenance? And now we're starting to have fun with our parks, right? We have these master plans, and we're bringing in programming, and we're adding to that. It was methodical. Did it happen overnight? Did we promise it would? No, we're not perfect. And we said that in those living rooms when we talked about cityhood. We're not perfect. It's not going to be puppies and rainbows and pots of gold and all of that. It's going to be hard work. just like we said with city, there's a lot to be done. And it's not going to be easy, right? But we promise, like we did with roads and sidewalks and the planning and the parks, we'll get there, right? And it will be something. That's something that I am very confident of. And one thing on our slides too was that while we're taking care of deferred maintenance and while we are cutting those reduction times, we've got to do studies. We've got to know what's out there, right? We've done a little bit of that, but we've got to say stormwater issues, again, worst to first, and just start ticking it off, right? Getting those funds and just start ticking it off and managing that and taking care of that while we're doing the deferred maintenance. Again, just like you saw us with SPOS and with parks. The other thing is we have inventory right now, right? And you saw the timeline of what it takes for the county to help us take care of that inventory. We're adding inventory all the time. How many miles of new sidewalks? Can I put you on the spot? I can't remember. You may not remember. Okay, 6 or 7 miles. We're doing the sidewalk gaps, right? Sometimes there's gaps in sidewalks. So we're adding inventory all the time. We're adding, street cans for sanitation, pickup, all of that. We're adding a trail system that's coming in. How do I say this without advocating? We're going to be educating, right? We're adding inventory to this previous inventory. And our maintenance plan right now doesn't really handle what we need with the current inventory. So I'll say that again. We're adding inventory and we're going to keep the same maintenance plan. That's it. I'm done. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
I think we can just move to Q&A, but thank you for asking me to speak. I do have to say, my first 90 days, I counted, I had over 100 people email me or ask me about a pothole or stormwater issues. I have several residents in District 2, especially who are concerned about stormwater. So I do think this is an important step for the city. I hope I didn't advocate. Thank you.
No. And just for those of you who might not know, I won't make you all turn. We have maps all over the room. So we have 3 districts, 3 city council districts. In this, for all of you online, we have 3 city council districts in the city, and each of those districts has 2 elected representatives plus the mayor. So Kara is District 2, which is sort of the western and southwestern corner. If you think of Tucker as kind of a triangle, she's that part nearest 285 on that side of town. District 3 is the top of the triangle. That's Ann Lerner, who you saw here. And we mentioned Virginia, but Virginia Reese is sitting back here. She happens to be District 1. So you have at least one of each of your elected representative districts here tonight. You might want to seek them out and ask them questions afterwards or get to know them. I say it every chance I get. You probably don't run into your congressperson or maybe even your county commissioner in the grocery store. They represent big numbers of people in large areas of land. A city council district for us is maybe 12,000, 12,500 people. You have 2 from each. You're going to see them in the park, in the grocery store, whatever it is. Their phone numbers, their emails are out there. That's a big part of why we did what we did. So don't be shy about contacting us, me, them, about whatever's on your mind. Ask a question, or if you have a pothole, we're trying to give you a place to get that taken care of. So, all right. If you have a comment card, I think you can hand that off to Sonia, one of those little index cards, if you'd like to ask a question that she'll read for us. But if you have a question, you're welcome. We said you should come up here so that the folks on Zoom can hear it, but if you'd rather just stand up and ask it, I'll repeat it so that they can hear it. And we'll include them in best we can. Don't start talking yet. That's right. You've been here.
If we vote yes, money that's at DeKalb County now, do we get some of that money to Tucker for the maintenance?
Money that you've already paid to DeKalb County?
That's correct.
We're going to talk to them about that. Okay. It's unclear, but yeah, you would think that if they have a sinking fund and part of that's been funded by taxes paid from people in Tucker, yep,
We should get that back.
Yep.
Okay. Number two, I'm looking at the drainage now that we currently hold, let's say across the street. And I've asked several times DeKalb County to come and clean that area because we have a drainage area and we have a lake that's somewhere connected to us out front.
yeah.
And I have to physically go to DeKalb County and make them come and get it done. So that's how I've been getting it done. So let me ask another question. If this starts July 1st, right? Are you going to get the list from DeKalb County or we start all over again and writing a new list?
Oh, no, we got the list. That's what I
We have
showed
the
you.
list, okay.
So those are our first priorities, but we also recognize there'll be something happen on the first day. There's a project you may be aware of, but you've never reported. Nobody knows it's a problem. You'll hear that Tucker's in the business. You're going to come over here and make us fix it, right?
Okay.
So we got to kind of prepare for all of that at once.
Last question. It's $72, correct?
$6 a month.
Okay. So we pay, our storm drainage is 48 or 49, as I remember. Okay. So 72 is a lot, but I'm understanding why do we need to pay at least 72? Why can't we go 58 or 60? Why we get to 72?
It comes from pencil to paper analysis. We said with all of these things, the services we already provide, any services we might consider in the future, we don't just say we're going to provide stormwater. We say we want to be able to respond on this kind of timeliness. We want to be able to do this much on the backlog, so to speak. We want to be able to do, not only do we want to get to a level of doing maintenance, we want to be doing preventative maintenance. The ideal is we get ahead of it and we're replacing and repairing facilities because we know they're old, not because they went bad. We get to them beforehand. And we think that's what it's going to take. It's what other cities have found, and I won't speak for the county, but they've been talking and thinking a long time. It's been 20 some years since they raised their rate.
Okay.
And that's why I say, even if they're doing a spectacular job, they'd run out of money before they could do everything that needed to be done. And we don't want to put ourselves in that place.
Last question. We're not going to be having an increase every year. Is that correct?
Well, not as long as I'm mayor. How about that? Yeah, no, we're as confident as we can be sitting here today. That's what's needed. That's what we're able to provide a very high level of service with. And, you know, if inflation continues at 10% a year.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, right here on the front. So the question was, what does it require to pass? 50% plus one, just like any other election. It doesn't require a super majority or anything like that. It's a majority of the vote. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I'll come to you next, Carlos. Please.
My name is Carlos Ortiz. Thank you. I have a question regarding the stormwater. I'm sorry, showing my back to you. The sewer in the Cobb County as a metro area is a combined sewer. Most of the areas in the metro area. So how can we differentiate? Because we're talking stormwater management in the sense of perhaps drainage on the sides of the road or situations like that, but the stormwater will go also to our sewer system. So how we're going to separate those? Because then the maintenance, we talk about that the sewer system is going to remain in the county, and we're going to manage some water. Are we going to manage only retaining ponds, retention ponds? That's the idea, or what else?
It's a great question. I'm going to trust that it's not a trick question because I know you
No.
know more about this than I do. But I will attempt an answer for you. So yes, we're talking only about stormwater, which is a separate system. Now the pipes run parallel, they cross over each other, but it's a separate system. One of the problems that DeKalb is having right now is that stormwater is seeping into the water, if that makes sense. If you have a cracked pipe, you get a heavy rain, stormwater system fills up or saturates the ground, it leaks in and backs up the sewer system. That's a lot of what you've been reading about in the news. we're not touching the sewer system. This is purely stormwater. So creeks and ditches, gutter systems,
Gutters.
culverts, all those things that are part of the stormwater system, including detention ponds. So some of you may be aware, it includes in 3 of our parks. So Twin Brothers Lakes at John's Homestead Park down here, District 2, Cofer Lake at Cofer Park, District 3, and Lake Aaron at Henderson Park. Those are all part of the stormwater system. So the point, I'm telling you, like, you don't know this, talk to somebody else. The point is you got to manage that water. You just can't let it hit the ground and run wherever it runs. And so all these pipes and ditches and culverts and things are about gathering that water, putting it somewhere where it can be released on a more controlled basis. And so those lakes are detention ponds. That's where a lot of this water ends up. All of those lakes have dams that would cause varying degrees of catastrophe if they were to fail. And so as part of this, we're taking responsibility for all those aspects of stormwater, but not sewer.
Yeah. And the areas that they are separate.
Yeah.
Okay.
The facilities themselves are separate. What else? I think over here there was a question.
I'm Sharon Summers Crier on Sims Court. We've had lots of problems on our street with stormwater problems and sewer backups the whole 30 years that I've lived on that street. And so I'm wondering, where's all the equipment going to come from that we're going to use, and where's the staff coming from? And is all this, I came late to the meeting, so I didn't know if you'd already talked
Nope.
about it.
I don't know.
But, you know, we're having to reinvent the wheel. DeKalb County has all that in place. And I question the wisdom of not pushing them harder to provide us the services we've already paid for versus reinventing the wheel and starting another system and more equipment and more staff.
It's a fair question. And there are a couple of different models that we could follow. So you might be aware when we began the city on day 1, we didn't have any staff. We hired a company that was then called CH2M Hill. Over time, they came a different name, and then they merged with another company called Jacobs. They provided all the startup, primarily staff, but some equipment kinds of things as well. Deep experience in that. In fact, Jacobs and CH2M are both, their roots are in water systems, water management, public utility kinds of things. So we could follow a similar course in this, and there are at least 5 or 6 big, well-known firms that do this sort of thing. We could have a turnkey contract with a company like that who would come in and with some planning, be on the ground doing all those things on July 1. The other end would be we hire our own staff, we get our own equipment and all that. Very unlikely. More likely is something somewhere in between, some blend of those things. Whether we want to invest and own the equipment, get it, the service and the facilities and the equipment itself by way of a contractor, that's part of what we're talking about now, and we'll have plenty of time to make that decision and contract with one before the day would come.
So at this point, it's about hiring a subcontractor to come in and start this right away for us. Is that correct?
Well, when you say subcontractor, I'm thinking like,
We're not going to invest in the equipment, facilities, personnel, the whole shoot and match that
yeah,
DeKalb County has already done. We're going to be subcontracting out to one of these companies that you've talked about doing. And how does that compare in price to what we've already been experiencing?
well, so a couple of things. We would, and again, full transparency, we haven't made those decisions. We haven't even bid out those contracts yet. But we would likely have a contract with an asphalt company that fixes potholes, and a different contract with a company that brings personnel to adjust traffic signals, and another contract with a company that's going to mow the right of ways or pour concrete to repair curbs. So the city would have those contracts. We have to have personnel inside the city to manage those contractors and all of those activities. That's not any different than the result is the same as whether they were our employees or someone else's employees. If we were paying more, it would be because, and we do it right now in the city, if we need more personnel, if we lose someone and we don't want to be without, we have somebody next day, same day. We have a staff of people that kind of fill those gaps, as it were. So there's some benefits to doing it that way. In the long run, most cities counties end up with those people employed in-house. But a lot of cities now are doing it just like this indefinitely because it works. Sorry, Ann, you want to add something?
Okay.
One, and I don't mean disrespect by this, but you said for 30 years you've had problems on your street
We
with
have.
stormwater. And then you asked, let's work a little bit harder with DeKalb. And I don't know if you missed this or not, but we have done absolutely everything. Michelle was adamant on that.
I
So,
did hear you
so,
speak.
yeah, so right now, and if you look and see, we're paving roads now with contractors. We're building sidewalks now with contractors, with management, from our team. We are maintaining our parks with contractors. So you've seen successes with managing those contractors to come in. You can amp up, you can, go down. So that service and can be more efficient. And here's the difference. If that contractor does not do a good job, guess what happens? They don't come back and do work. And we've had that with one contractor that we had for paving. They do not come back and they do not do any work with us. That is not a choice now. So you have contractors at your home that come in and fix your air conditioning. I had a contractor do a new roof yesterday. Amazing job. They didn't do an amazing job. I wouldn't say who they were, and they'd never come back again and do any work in my house. This is our house, right? So we have a lot more control when it is someone who is a contractor. We've tried to hold that with the intergovernmental agreement. And it's not your fault, which is a contract, which is not your fault, Commissioner Patrick, right? There's a lot of other things in place. Again, and I'm going to talk about this. You can slap my hand. We were in talks with the chief operating officer at DeKalb County to look at, we'd keep our bucket of money that comes from you guys in Tucker. That was the other thing that wasn't talked about a lot. Your bucket of money will be guaranteed to stay in Tucker, right? So we sometimes weren't sure about that, right? Previously or now. And so the chief operating officer said, let's look at a service delivery model that could work that way. You have your bucket of money and you guys go ahead and hire contractors, kind of like what we're saying now, but it would still be run through the county. That never saw the light of day. So I'm just going to say every option, when I say every option was done, every option was looked at.
So to your point that this is a house and there are interlocking pieces of this puzzle, you talked about stormwater and the sewer being parallel and affecting one another, but we're only going to do the stormwater and we can't fix the sewer. When you fix the streets, I saw that was wonderful, except in some places, the sewer was continuing to leak under the street, which undermined everything you had done. So you can't fix a pothole if the problem is the sewer is still leaking.
That's right.
So that's a problem.
That's right. Yep, that's exactly right. But let me be clear that the pipes run near each other. Those two systems are not built to work together. When they are working together, that's a problem because they're not, the two should never mix, as I'm sure you can understand. I'll come to you next.
I just want a clarification. It says if the public works referendum is approved, would I pay both DeKalb County and the city of Tucker for public works services? The answer here is no. Similar to when parks and recreation services were transferred to the city, residents will no longer pay DeKalb County for the management of public works services. My understanding now is when we pay our DeKalb County tax bill, we pay them for all these things and it gets put into that other bucket and then returned to Tucker. Is that how this will work?
Well, you're kind of asking a couple of different questions, but within all those line items on your county tax bill, there's a line down at the bottom now that says Tucker, and it's like 0.8 of a mil.
What I'm asking is, we're not going to get a separate bill from the city
No.
of Tucker and pay Tucker a check.
Nope.
We're going to pay DeKalb County one check and they're going to separate it out by the delineation on the bill.
Actually collect the money. Yep. And
and then
return it to us.
the city of
That's
Tucker.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I told the gentleman over here I'd call on him. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so the gentleman was asking why not go farther and take on the other water services, sanitary sewer, wastewater, waste sewage. They're separate systems. It gets over my head, frankly, the specifics of the logistics, but stormwater is easy enough to separate from the county. In other words, we know where our streets are, we know where stormwater is coming from that we need to manage. That water system, sewage system runs throughout the county. There's big pipes and small pipes and they crisscross here and there. It would be pretty difficult to somehow say, it's been done in some places, but pretty difficult to say, okay, this part we now own, we're going to charge a fee related to it. It's a continuous flow. And it's besides being difficult, we don't see the need for it right at the moment. The discussion about DeKalb sewer and the consent decree and all those things is another subject altogether, but they are bound to do some things. They've made some great steps recently toward those repairs. We just don't feel a sense of urgency to make that attempt for the return that we would get from it. Yeah, I don't know any other cities in DeKalb that do it. There's some places where, you know, there's a water line that's shared across county lines and things like that, but very isolated, very specific sort of agreements around those. Yeah. And they go to treatment plants, you know, our water, even in the city of Tucker, the sewage from Tucker goes to treatment plants in different parts of the county, but depending on where it's coming from, whether it's uphill or downhill, pumped, all that kind of stuff. There's just not a lot to be gained from us taking on somehow breaking that piece up and taking it under our own management. Was that you I saw a while ago? No, it's less than 1 mil, right? It's like 0.86 mils. Yeah. That's a great question. Thanks. So right now, the city of Tucker is, by our charter, which is state law, not allowed to charge more than 1 mil in property tax. We started out charging, when we assumed responsibility for the parks, 0.9 mils came out of your property tax. In other words, your millage rate, which I'll explain, was reduced by that much in DeKalb County. And that's when that line showed up for Tucker farther down the bill. We use that up until this point in our history, that's to fund parks, period. That's it. They collect 9/10 of 1 mil, they give it to us, we spend it on parks. If we do this, 2 or 3 things happen at the same time. Our cap on the millage rate goes from 1 to 3, meaning we could charge up to 3 mils. The city sets the millage rate every year. So every year during budget time, we go through all kinds of gyrations. It's been pretty simple up to now because it's only raised for one purpose. It goes to parks. It's that simple. We would set a millage rate between that 1 that it is now and the 3 that we would be allowed to go up to. We would set a millage rate sufficient to fund roads and maintenance. Stormwater is a separate item. So I'm not sure I'll get the numbers right. I think DeKalb is right now charging 0.98 mils, almost 1 mil for roads and maintenance, buried in all those lines of taxes, and you go in through their budget and you separate it out. That's what they've allocated to roads and maintenance right now. I'm not familiar with that. I could be wrong, but I've not seen it. But within it, whether it shows up on the tax bill or not, they're charging something very close to 1 mil, 0.9 something mils is what's in their budget for roads and maintenance countywide, which includes Tucker right now. So if this were to pass, that, whatever that number actually is, would come out of your DeKalb County tax bill and be added to your Tucker Special Services District. Yeah, it's a wash, except we think it's going to cost a little bit more than that. So we charge 0.86 right now for parks. Let's say it's 0.9 right now in the county. So that would be a wash. It would not be in the county anymore, but be added to Tucker. And we're talking about adding a slight bit to that ends up being around 2.5 total mils. I'm looking at my finance folks. Am I saying that right? So your total tax, your total millage rate for the city of Tucker on that line be about 2.5 mils. It would fund parks and roads and maintenance, and it would net to be about $70 a year for the average home value in Tucker. So if you're a little less or a little more, that 70 might be 60 or 80. That's the difference. That's right. That's right. I know it's, yeah. And that's why we're trying to be careful. We want to be realistic. We want to be honest. We want to tell you what you can really expect. It's not exactly knowable, and it's different for each person because it depends what your house is valued at. But as an example, we use the average house. Yeah. Yeah, we can't, under any circumstance, on the total of those two for parks and roads and maintenance, we could never exceed 3 mils without another referendum of the people in the city. Yes, sir. Was there somebody else I promised to come back to? I'll get you next.
During the advocacy for the city, there were questions about EMS, there were questions about the fire stuff. And every time the response was, well, we have great relationships with DeKalb County, so on. What I don't know is if the relationships aren't so great, or if the maturity after 7 years, you just think you have enough knowledge now that you can do the job better. But I have a question about the 3 mils and also about the direction. Is this the beginning of the Tucker's looking to carry out more functions that generally accrue to a city? Of the 6 or 8, this Oliver, whatever his name was, that had all of these, ideas. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, several aspects of it. So I would say we have very good relationships with DeKalb County, and that's a result of a lot of effort on the part of our council and staff and the county's commission and staff. We all recognize the intention of creating a city of Tucker was never to somehow divorce ourselves from DeKalb County and become an island of our own and, we'll take care of us. What I was trying to describe earlier is that we believed then that there existed at that time certain things that we could do better very locally. Parks is the first example that comes to mind. Zoning is a huge issue. Prior to cityhood, zoning was all done by a planning commission and a board of commissioners, met in Decatur, represented the whole county. It wasn't a very local, it was hard to get across what our very particular local needs and desires were. So those were things that we put in that initial bucket and said, we can do better for ourselves. And so we're not seeking to answer the other part of your question. I would not say that we have a sort of a long-term master plan to ultimately take over all those services for ourselves. But as we identify them and as we have experience to see after doing everything that we can, as Ann has emphasized, to do the best we can and work together, the question is always going to be, is there an efficiency? Is there a benefit in doing that with the county, or is there a greater benefit in doing it ourselves? Fire is a good example. The only city in DeKalb County that has its own fire department is Decatur, and they have for a very long time.
A question about the millage, could for example, 911, which is not part of roads maintenance, if you had enough in the 3 mills and you thought you could take over 911, could you do this by the referendum, or is this only for roads and maintenance?
Well, this referendum is only for stormwater and roads and maintenance.
Well, stormwater's fee, right? So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's part of the same referendum. But to your larger point, I think we have an IGA with the county for police, fire, and emergency services. It's a big fat contract, spells everything out, what they're supposed to do, what we should expect. If we reach a point where we're dissatisfied, and there are some people who are here and elsewhere, we would do just what we've done here.
You'd have to do another.
We would look at it and say, can we do better? What are our options? What are the models? What do other cities do where it works well? What could we do here? Evaluate the costs and so on and so forth. And the council would reach a conclusion, yes or no, but we don't get to make that decision. Our decision is just to present it to the public like we're doing.
Question, I think you're in this. If you're in 30087, the post office doesn't recognize you as Tucker. And I'm even registered as Stone Mountain.
Me too.
For my voting. Is
Yeah.
that ever going to change?
Yeah, no. That's a literal act of Congress, which we have not yet been able to achieve, but that's a big subject of its own. All right. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and we could give some other, if it's 300, 400, 500, just to give some examples. So right, yep. Yeah. Yes, mostly based on modeling, and I can't. Well, I wouldn't even attempt to quote the numbers, but we look at other cities. Dunwoody happens to be a pretty close example in terms of the number of pipes underground and similar facilities, similar square mileage, and so on. So we can look at their budget and say, how might ours be different or similar? And so most of the work that we've done has been of that sort. Just to be sure that we're on an order of magnitude. I'm sorry. I'm supposed to repeat the questions. So the first question had to do with what the millage rate would actually translate into on a different value of house, and whether we use $328,000 as the average value of a home in Tucker. You looked at something that said it's more like 420,000. With some trepidation, I'll tell you what a mill is, and you can work on calculating it for yourself. It's $1 per $1,000 of your property's value. Yeah, well, right away, you start making modifications to that. So there's the assessed value, there's the 40%, maybe what you're referring to, and then you have exemptions, a homestead exemption, a senior exemption, property value freezes, all that. So it's not possible to just say, this is exactly how it works out, but we use that 328 as an example, and it's not a bad idea to put some higher and lower examples so people can relate to that a little bit better. And your second question just had to do with the order of magnitude, kind of on a total budget. If we're going to raise X thousands or millions of dollars from those fees, how do we know that we're going to be able to do the job for that amount of money. That comes at this point, since we haven't bid out contracts and things, we're comparing ourselves against the most similar cities that we can find, level of service, because every level, you know, Dunwoody might have the same rate as us, but provide a different level of service than some other city who's charging the same rate. Yeah, now in stormwater, that doesn't make any difference because it's single family residential pays the same amount, but yes, it translates differently on the millage rate. Yeah. 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 Ken says it's not our first rodeo. If there are people here and elsewhere, this is what they do. They live and breathe cost estimates. How much does it cost to repair a pipe, lay a new pipe? What capacity can it handle? What do you do when it breaks? It's not me, but we have good people on hand already employed and contracted here, and more that we can acquire in the same way. Were you trying to say something? No? Go ahead, or come on. Thank you. Berkeley Boone is on record as being for the referendum, for those who are listening. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different sources of those, but yeah, if it's our project and we're funding it or seeking funding, we would get to apply directly for the project that's going to happen in Tucker. Yeah, if that's your question, is yes, that draws a direct line for us from those funding sources. Yeah, we do a lot of that now on the things that we have authority over. Yeah. Actually, I would take exception that the sidewalks on Henderson Road, the downtown sidewalks projects were what we call legacy projects that were at various stages before we became a city. And DeKalb County was in fact very diligent to follow those through. Some of them took several years even since we became a city, but they're done or being done. I'm not aware of any. Yeah, some of it was us adding money to get it across the finish line. I'm not aware of any, like a stormwater project that they just are proactively planning that they would say, mark it off the board, because we have this gigantic backlog of things that they say they can't get to, can't fund, not yet. So really the question is, can we hold them to those projects, right? So they can't just drag their feet and those become our problem. We believe in some way they're committed to those projects already. Yeah. Oh, we can provide it to you. We update it every day. What else? How are we doing? All the way in the back there. That continues to be us, and primarily from SPLOST. We had some money from our general fund, but SPLOST, and I'll just say without advocating for anything, that program's been underway for about 4 years. It's got about 1.5 years, I forget exactly, to go. It was a 6-year program. At some point about this time next year, it's going to come up for renewal. We would have to vote again to continue that. We have worked diligently, and I can tell you, I'm the chairman of the policy committee for the DeKalb Municipal Association, which is the organization of all the mayors in the city. And we recognize without a doubt, we've got to behave ourselves. We've got to spend that money well and wisely and be able to show the results of it, because it's an important funding source for us. And the county takes the same attitude. So we are being as diligent as we know how to be to use that money in the right way so that we can continue that funding source. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting to repeat the questions, but please go ahead and I'll try to do better. No, thanks.
DeKalb's not doing any paving. We're the ones that are doing all the paving, and we have a list every year that we vote on. Ken, this last time, how many streets did we pave? 62 streets. So we're going through our list, and I forget how much money we put towards SPLOST. How much money did we put towards SPLOST for paving? So 2.5 million from SPLOST, and then we add about $1 million from the general budget. So we've been adding to that every year, but we are the ones that are doing all of the paving. And so every year we go through. Oh yeah, that list has been, it is true. Okay, we don't, you're correct. We don't pave La Vista and the state roads, but again, my statement that we are the ones doing the paving and not the county and GDOT is, that is correct. Thank you. He's known me since I'm in college. I knew he wanted to correct me right there, right? Don't have him share any stories though. And so we put that list up every year and we vote on it, and it goes through budget. I used to be a 7th grade teacher too. Can I get eyes here? Eyes here. Can you hear me? Clap once. And then we have our, who did our study? Stantec did our study, and that's on the site. Sonia, where can we find that on the site for people so they know that too? Under government, SPLOST. And so you'll see also the study from Stantec that you see that we are chipping away at that list every time. So yeah, most definitely.
You can see it on our GIS, our mapping system as well. You actually see a map of the city color coded by what's going to be paved next and what each road is rated, so you can sort of see where the road you care about is falling in that range. Larry Kaiser. Bound to be coming with a stumper.
Yeah, no, not at all, Mr. Mayor. I can be an advocate of this, big time. I am Larry Kaiser. I'm the engineer of record for the Tucker Summit Community Improvement District. We are a self-taxing district where businesses pay additional tax to maintain rights of way, pick up garbage, partner with governments on infrastructure improvements, mow rights of way, unfortunately fix potholes. 2011, the CID was formed. We have averaged, the CID has averaged about 1/3 of our budget every year for infrastructure improvements and repairs. Nothing, I'm not going to speak negatively because there's no reason to, about the Board of Commissioners in DeKalb County. It's not going to happen. They're challenged with having sufficient funds and manpower and staff to maintain rights of way in the county. Pure and simple. It's a fact. I've been working with the county in my prior life and in my consulting life with the CIDs since 1990. I'm very aware of DeKalb County government. So when the city comes to you and says, we can do this more efficiently, I deal with city governments all the time as a consultant. 99% of the time, city governments do it correctly. Pure and simple. So back to the CID, we are tired of spending 1/3 of our budget on maintenance. We've been doing it. Cleaning out catch basins, mowing rights away, picking up garbage. Now, we will continue to do it if the city, if this passes, which I hope it does, but we will have a partner with the city to do that with. So it's less of a cost to the business owners who've been doing this since 2011, average about $500,000 a year since 2011. We also partner with DeKalb County. Commissioner Bradshaw, Commissioner Patrick, they have provided funds to us to do the repairs on Mountain Industrial Boulevard that you may see ongoing, fixing pedestrian ramps, fixing sidewalks. So both sides are helping. The city is unable to help us on the maintenance side, but we've been partnering with them on infrastructure improvements, intersection projects, et cetera, which is great. We'll continue to do that. All I'm here to say is this: that thing needs a pass, pure and simple. No questions whatsoever. I see it firsthand all the time. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thanks for that endorsement, Larry Kaiser of the Community Improvement District. But, there you are. And as long as you're here, just a quick insight into the way some of these things work. So the Community Improvement District that he's talking about runs sort of the length of Mountain Industrial, includes all the industrial area like North Royal Atlanta, South Royal Atlanta, all the way down to the other side of 78, the Stone Mountain Business Park, I think is, yeah, to East Ponce. Those businesses in there, I want you to hear what he said. Those properties choose to tax themselves more than they're required to pay, extra tax. The return is they get to spend it within the district on things that go above and beyond what the city or the county is able or willing to do. I think that's a fair way of saying it. So they tax themselves. It's a great partnership because their interests align with ours. They just represent the property owners over there. So security, beautification, lighting, infrastructure, curbs, potholes, all those things to make it more attractive for businesses to locate there and for citizens from all around to shop or work or do the things that they do in a business district. Yep.
I know there's 28 CIDs in the Metro Atlanta area. I know of 2 out of 28. We're not in the business of that. We're in the business of economic development, beautification, increasing property values, increasing sales. So at the end of the day,
Attracting employers.
it improves the city government, right? Taxes, et cetera. That's what we're in the business of. We're not in cost sharing on big projects. Protection improvements, we do that all day long. We need to stay away from this.
Oh, yeah. You know, if you see that in the city of Tucker, you call me or you call Ken, because we take a lot of pride in the degree and level of inspections that we do, both to ensure that we're getting the quality, the depth of the asphalt, the composition of the asphalt, cases where the road needs to be milled down instead of just paved over. I can't speak to maybe what you saw somewhere, but that's a high priority for us, and we'd like to know about it if you see something that's otherwise.
I won't make you repeat my questions, just for you.
Thank you. Speak loudly.
I've got a few, yeah. For the record, I'm Jeff Wiggs, and I have no opinion right now whether I like this or don't like this, and that's the reason I'm here. Some of these y'all probably already thought of, don't know if you have. So some of these are kind of questions. You might not know the answers. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but it's one of those things that's if you don't know the answer or the staff don't know the answer, it's something I would urge you to get the answer before and let everyone know what those answers are before we move forward. First of all, did DeKalb County give us, or do we have access to, basically the layout of all the pipes, the condition, the years, that kind of thing? Because I know obviously with sewage and stormwater, they run the cameras through and all that good stuff. Do we have access to that? So we know if we take over this, what we're inheriting, and that could also obviously play into the cost analysis of what staff is going to propose to say, hey, we can take this, because the last thing I want to do is say yes to this. Yeah. And then a year down the road, we realize, oh, wait a minute here. We got 14 miles of pipe that's 60 years old instead of 30 years old that we thought. Yep. And now we're having to replace them all. So I guess that's my first kind of question. Has that been thought of? And if
that's a good one. Yep. So yes, they have at least some of that. It's not perfect. It's not current. It's not everything we'd like to have, but they've given us what they have.
Mhm.
We have done I'm going to say a spot study. We've gone out detention ponds, pipes that we know of, all those things. We spot checked them against what we thought, exactly what you just said. We think there's a 30-year-old pipe down there. Let's go look and see. And let's see if it looks like it's 30 years old.
Thank you.
And so we've done some of that. But the first thing that we'll do when the referendum passes is a complete scope of the entire system. We'll pull a camera through every pipe that's out there so that we'll know, is it blocked? Is it old? Did we think it was corrugated, but it's something else? Did we think it's, 10 years old, but it looks more like it's 30? That's the baseline that we'll draw. And it's even better than that if you like this stuff. If you want to talk about pipes a lot more. Our GIS system that I mentioned a minute ago, GIS is Geographical Information System. It's a mapping system, but it's not like, how do you get to Jeff's house? It's, where is every stormwater pipe in the city? Where is every sidewalk in the city? Where's every stop sign in the city? And we're building that. We've got a lot of it. So we would add stormwater to that system along with the condition, along with the rating, along with the plan for it as to when it needs attention, either for maintenance or right now because it's on the list. So yes-ish.
We've got an idea, but obviously we don't know 100% because I know they don't, even DeKalb County. Exactly. DeKalb County don't know 100%.
That study's going to cost somewhere in the hundreds of thousands, potentially as much as $1 million just to draw the baseline. So we haven't spent that money without but that's one of the things that
I'm not advocating doing it after the fact. If we inherited, hey, you know what?
We're going to know.
Wait till it breaks if you want to, because at that point, I just don't, it's one of those things that we don't know ahead of time. It's scary. But anyway, and of course, I think someone had already asked this, but it really wasn't really clear as far as the cost analysis for starting all this up as compared to the taxes that we're going to be bringing in. Are we going to have a good buffer there? Because obviously starting up anything is astronomical, which means astronomical startup means less repairs at first. And then as it builds, then you can do more repairs year 2 and 3 and so forth. So that's been all factored in, I'm assuming. I'm just.
Yeah. And it's one of the reasons for using a contracting model, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of going out and buying all the yellow equipment and all the stuff that's needed, we are a contractor who not only has all the equipment, but comes with the expertise, and it may have been working in DeKalb County, even Tucker, prior to this. So you avoid the big financial outlay, but we know, we've said several times already tonight, there's a chunk of work. We don't have to ask anybody. We don't have to scope a pipe. We know it needs to be done, and we'll be planning around that.
I'm not comfortable with your answer about DeKalb County and the tax money. I just paid my tax bill, as a matter of fact, and I won't even tell you how much my tax bill is because it's astronomical. If I vote yes for this, if we take over these services July 1st, what's our guarantee that DeKalb County sometime in July maybe will give the city half my tax money for that part? What's our guarantee? And if there's not a guarantee, that sounds like where's the money going to come from to do this startup from July 1st to December 31st? You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's a bit of a legal question, but right now we have an IGA with DeKalb County.
Mm-hmm.
That says they get to keep our tax money. They're going to spend it on these things. Here's how we're going to relate. This vote would authorize the city to terminate that IGA. So really what I think the way to say it is they would no longer be entitled to collect and spend that money. So does that help? Yeah, but I think the question was, didn't they give money back for parks? That was a little bit of, it's a different aspect of the financial equation, but whether they're entitled to continue to tax you, there's no authority remaining for that. If the city votes yes and the council terminates that agreement, they no longer have the authority to tax you for that.
That's 2023. My concern is the July 1st in other words, basically from July 1st to December 31st, are we going to be in kind of a lull of not really,
Well, maybe I'm understanding your question because it doesn't line up with the tax year and the tax collection. We worked that out in there's just a transition period where I'm not sure how to say it.
It's okay. as long-
But it would be by agreement with us. And I don't know. I mean,
We're not gonna
I
be,
thi-
we're not gonna be in a lull sitting here basically.
no, no,
for
no, no,
months
no, no.
with-
We're going to
with
know
we're
where
gonna
the
be
money
able to-
is and who's due from whom and all that. The case where somehow the county said, nanner, we're not paying you. I mean, that's kind of a.
Well, that's what I see.
That
I
would
see
be a
if this thing-
nuclear meltdown, yeah.
If I see this, if this gets voted, and I'm not there again, I'm not pro against, I'm just, if it does, I could see DeKalb County saying, hey, well, you know what, January 1st to July 31st, you know what, hey, good luck with your, we'll get to you. I mean, the emergency stuff, they got to, but everything else I can see then, which means it's going to be more for the
Yeah.
city to absorb, which I get that. That's
Yeah.
business with DeKalb County, unfortunately,
But, and right.
I
And there are
just,
informal things that remain in place. I mean, Robert still wants to have a good working relationship with the city and vice versa. And we have other business together. So it's not to anybody's benefit to try to pull a fast one, so to speak.
I appreciate that one vote back there, but that's,
Understood.
I won't go any further with that. Yeah. Do we know, and this was my last question, do we know when you gave the response times, the 40, the 90 days and 120 days, so forth, that information, is that for the whole county or is that just for our city of Tucker stuff, right?
Those are our specific, we reported a pothole on your street. We reported a stop sign down on the corner. Those are our requests day by day.
Do we have access or do we have already response times for the rest of the county or different areas of the county?
No. The only reason we have the data we have is it's our data. We
Right.
keep up with it.
Okay.
DeKalb County can't tell us how long it should be, how long it really was. Their
Strictly
system
in-house.
doesn't, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I got.
The hall monitor has arrived. I think we are gonna
Yes.
call it
I want to
quits.
thank everybody for coming out this evening. I thought it was really great and I really appreciated everybody who stood up and asked their questions and asked for clarifications. I just wanted to reiterate to everybody that we have 2 more meetings coming up. The dates are on our flyers. I think it's the 16th. I don't have them in front of me. I'm so sorry. The 18th at 10 a.m. and then the 26th again at 7. And I have up on the screen right now our landing page for Public Works. It's interactive. Click on everything, explore everything, and share it with your neighbors and invite them to come next time. So I want to thank everybody, especially Mayor Allman and our electeds. Oh, and absolutely, yes, we will be expanding those questions and we really appreciate it. So y'all drive safely and have a good night.